I have quite a story to tell. Like I was really into research. I really wanted to become someone, no, in the old part, in the old uh, from my old point of view, to become someone in the research field. So basically, I come from a little city in Italy, Benevento, in Campania. I moved to Naples for my studies. I got a bachelor degree in physics, a master's degree in physics, and then I made a jump to Belgium, to Ghent, to get my PhD in neuroscience. And then this whole experience gave me the opportunity to, first of all, improve my English, and then so being able to the worldwide market, um, and then to jump to Sydney. So I went from Belgium to Sydney in order to start the postdoc and my first steps into the research field. And it's curious enough because whenever you're going to do, it's always going to be the first step. Like after 14 years of studying, like 2 degrees, a PhD, and so on and so forth, I go to Sweden in order to do my postdoc, and I say, okay, this is the first step in the research field. And come on, guys. This is still the first step. Very promising and encouraging. So I went there and I experienced a lot of distress. Actually, why? Because whoever I wanted to be wasn't aligned whatsoever with who I was becoming. So I realized that ah, now I'm going to say something that can be very controversial and against the grain, but I realized that the the upper you go in the ladder of that kind of career, the more a politician you need to be. Uh, so this wasn't for me. I wanted to really be a researcher because I wanted to help other people. I thought that being a researcher was the best way to really be able to help other people. No, like there are a lot of discoveries, a lot of things, and people are inventing right now, and to really give a meaningful contribution. But unfortunately, it wasn't like that for me, at least from my experience. So I went through a burnout, depression, and this was also like, in a way, the whole process was accelerated by my inner journey I was going through. And I think that you know it very well whenever you go through this discovery of who you really are and how you can become an adult. And when I say an adult, I mean completely independent from the judgmental attitude of your family or of your friends uh, that you had since childhood and so on and so forth. So the first thing that you're going to face is, who do you want to be? And that's a tough question because it's really confronting. And say, yeah, indeed, wait a second. I've been doing this since ages, but I've never really thought about who I truly want to be and who I'm going to become if I continue to do exactly what I'm doing now. So that was the moment I saw my vision completely not aligned with what I was I was doing and how I would become. So I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, no, let's break, let's slow down a bit, and let's go back to the fundamentals here. So I decided to continue in a journey to really get a break from the research and from everything to truly understand whether research could be my my way. And I understood that it wasn't my way. So after a while, after I deepened my inner journey, I landed in life coaching. So I said, okay, what's the best way for me to help other people? And for me is to listen to other people. Something that I really hated while I was working in the research field was um, to need to tell my friends, listen, now I'm working. Sorry, I can't be there for you. I can be there for you in like 3 hours or something, or in 1 week. And I really hated it. It really hurt a lot to not be able to be there when it was needed. And so I decided to acquire the tools in order to be there for other people. At the very beginning, it was just something that I did for myself. And then I understood that I could help other people. So I tried it out and I saw that it worked. And from there, I started exploring the world out there and whoever I could serve the most. And I landed working with remote workers because I've been a remote worker for more than 50 years. I have been 15 years. I have been studying and working remotely. uh, so yes, I'm quite skilled in that. I developed a lot of discipline, confidence, and motivation to stay self motivated. So that's in a nutshell.
It's actually really beautiful where you touch on the remote working piece and really taking it back to where you started, saying you wanted to be a researcher because you wanted to help people. I can relate a lot to that myself. I was actually almost doing a PhD, but then being or having become a father during my master's degree, my ex-partner now was really like, Toby, you really need to like start doing something different here. And so I'm glad that actually that transition happened, because I feel there's, for me, I think, more impact to be made being outside of academia in an area where I can apply academia to make changes and transformations. And I wanted to pick up on the remote work and vulnerability, authenticity aspect that you kind of brought up, because you're beautifully open and you speak openly about the depression and the burnout that you went through. And so now, taking our current situation where effectively most of us are remote workers, we are living in a remote first world. What do you feel are the kind of core beliefs or mindsets that are needed to become successful or successfully deal with the changed work-life balance and how we relate to our co-workers, but also have family around potentially all the time?
Yeah, that's a very beautiful question. How can you become successful in now, above all now, when we have a lot of challenges to face? What I would say is that definitely, in order to be successful, we need to evolve. We need to change. We need to understand that the way we were doing things was not working, and now we can experience that. Imagine if you have a family, you are working at home the whole day, as you said, so having your family around you pretty much the whole time, and you can work because probably you are too focused on something to adjust, too focused on the dishes to wash, too focused on making dinner, too focused on trying to calm your kids. Um, so how do you deal with it? If you if you are too focused on career, on who you want to be, in like the career mindset that you want to have, you're going to be a sort of businessman, like completely in a hurry, but not in a real hurry. You are busy. You're not doing real business. See what I'm saying? So when you are busy the whole time, your mind is busy the whole time, and your emotions are basically just mixed up. So it's difficult to prioritize. It's difficult to get focused. It's difficult to get work done and to still have like an amazing life with your family. It's the so-called work-life balance. It's a really broad topic, but actually what I think it boils down to is, um, needing to understand that we have to prioritize no matter what. And being able to prioritize implies that we have to develop a vision for who we want to be and who we want to become. But in order to develop that vision, then we have to start by being completely honest with ourselves. And then we have to be vulnerable. So you see, in order to develop a vision, we have to be completely honest. In order to be completely honest, we have to start by being vulnerable. Not vulnerable towards other people. That one will come later. We should start being vulnerable towards ourselves. We should start talking to ourselves and say, Ale, maybe, maybe you suck at this, and it's totally fine. That's vulnerability. Vulnerability is to be honest and to still tell, okay, it's fine. I still accept you as you are. It's not, doesn't belong to vulnerability if I tell myself, Ale, you suck at it. So you are a bad person, and I start with the judgmental attitude. It doesn't help anybody to do something like that. So uh, it's fine to say that I have a lot to improve because we are not perfect anyway. So why would we try to get obsessed with this idea of perfection? So we are not perfect. We have our own weaknesses. We have our own blind spots, but it's fine.
See, this is
It's
really interesting what you're picking up there. When, because there's so much talk about work-life balance, and I think actually that's quite an outdated concept in a ways as well. Because basically, instead of taking life as one thing, it's like cut in the middle. This is work. This is life. And I think right now, that's what we're beginning to see more and more. There is no work-life balance. There's only life, and work really needs to be an expression of that life. Because as long as it's sort of like this half and half, there's inherent
what
tension. And I think right now, it's really, a friend of mine was saying, it's kind of like an earthquake. Everything that's not built really, really stably will fall apart. And I assume that there's a lot of, because I mean, I was in a similar job previously where I worked for really the money, not really sort of like because it was like my heart's desire. Um, and yeah, then I treated like work-life balance, and now doing a different thing, I feel like, oh, there's only life, and my work is an expression, one dimension of expressing myself.
exactly? Exactly. Instead of work-life balance, and it's more like work against life. So it's this kind of trade-off. It's like you want to exchange something. It's like work needs to exchange something with life, and you have to reach a compromise. Doesn't make any sense. It's more integrating work in life. It's an integration of these two big aspects. Otherwise, we start looking at things that occurs in life, so to say, in life, as a distraction from work. And whatever happens, uh, whatever is related to work is a distraction from life. And it's crazy. How can you get those two things completely separated? I mean, how can you pretend from a little child to be there to sit the whole time and to shut up because you are coding or you're programming or you are doing something that requires a lot of concentration? It's impossible. It's just impossible. In order to do that, you have to reach very compulsive level of control, and control comes from fear, while being open to life comes from trust, comes from courage, and that courage comes from vulnerability because you understand that you're not perfect in the first place, that you can't control all the variables that you have in your life, but you can just go along with it. Of course, I'm not saying that you don't have to put some strategies in order to allow, for instance, uh, 2 hours or 3 hours of complete silence in your life. Of course, you have to, but from a different perspective. It's not from the perspective of I deserve that, I have to need that, so you shut up. So I impose you my will. It's from a completely different point of view. It's like, listen, if I can't do this, then how are we going to go on? So it's more like communicating that if you can't get work done, there will be consequences, and those consequences are not pleasant, and that's a sign of vulnerability. Just say I'm not a superhero, so I need this. I'm just a human being, and I need, for instance, those 3 hours of complete silence. Otherwise, I can't get job done. If I don't get job done, something else is going to happen. So, see what I'm saying? Instead of reacting like I need those 3 hours of silence, silence, I kill you. Instead of doing something, citing a joke um, from a comedian. Instead of doing something like that, it's more like um, opening, giving giving a sign of a real opening to other people and say that's the real situation. That's what I'm going through. It might be that I've been studying the solution for this problem for 3 days and I still didn't come around with that. So help me. You ask for help to your team, to your boss, to whoever, but you find a solution with all the distractions, the so-called distraction. Actually, you find a solution taking into account the rest of your life.
That's really interesting what you say about the openness and willingness to say, hey, I need help. Or the other thing that I found fascinating was when you talked about the communication. Because right now there's really sort of like two levels of communication going on at the same time. One is the communication within the house with your fellow family members. And then the other one is the communication with your team, which are the people that you effectively see on screen all the time. Do you have some recommendations on how to manage these two streams of communication in the most effective, loving way possible?
Yes, and let me ask you a question first. Do you think that there are really two communication levels? That's a question also for our audience. No? It's like, do we really think, do we truly believe that there are two communication like two Tobias, who are once with talking to his family, once with talking to his colleagues? Definitely, they're going to be just a definitely they're going to be two channels, two communication channels. But you are the same person. If you can completely split yourself into the family guy and the working guy, I suspect that there might be something to investigate. Like, how can you be yourself, your true self, your genuine self, and talk differently to the to your family and to your colleagues? The same kind of loving attitude that you show with your family can be definitely applied to your colleagues. This doesn't mean that you are weak or that you have to be submissive towards your colleagues. This means that showing love to your colleagues is a way to set your boundaries and say, listen, guys, those are my boundaries, those are my responsibilities. I'm going to ask you for some feedback, definitely, but I'm going to act according to what my responsibilities are. I get your feedback, I take them into account, thanks a lot. But then at a certain point, you have to act according to your specific responsibilities. Imagine if you are in charge of making decisions. For instance, you definitely ask for feedback. So, okay, guys, what do you think about it? Fine. But at the end of the day, you have to be the one who pushes the button or not. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting what you're saying with regards to, I mean, me being the same person. And I, like when you said it, I definitely felt in my previous like versions of me, I feel like that there was that split, that I felt I was somebody else with the people close to me and the people that I worked with. And it's been quite beautiful over the last year and a half to 2 years to integrate it more and more and be really effectively the same person. However, what I think is still the case, it brings out different aspects of me. Like for example, when I'm with my two sons, it's all about play and rambunctiousness and kind of like being boisterous and having really this like inner child coming out again. While I mean, speaking with you right now, it's on a totally different sort of like intellectual level. You know, we're not sitting on the floor playing Lego together, and so that is what. Yeah, too bad, huh? And I mean, I think that's sort of the thing where it ties back to what I said earlier as well. Work being one dimension of self-expression, where I can be sort of playful with my kiddos and more sort of like intellectually engaged in my work, or more sort of like emotionally open and intimate in intimate relationships.
Mhm.
And so I think sort of like on a daily basis now, work and life really merging more and more. It's quite beautiful to see that we have now the possibility to really bring our full selves, because also we can no longer sort of like hide where we live. You know, suddenly like all these things that are around us reflect of like who we actually truly are. So it seems like we're genuinely bringing our full 100% selves into the office, or maybe not into the office, but to how we work. And the people, because I mean, this is what it comes down to, right? I mean, work is how are we making an impact in the world? How do we collectively serve each other? And I
Yeah.
feel through more authenticity and vulnerability, it just becomes so much more beautiful, because there's suddenly, it's not just about the head, but I feel so much more heart that we now perceive with each other. There's more kindness, more courage, there's
Mhm.
more sort of like forthcoming. But I think there's also more challenge, because we all see, as you say, we're not perfect. You know, we have our demons. And I guess depending on the level of self-awareness, it's easier to get triggered on these demons, or maybe you already know that they're there and you can you already tamed them. How have you experienced this, and what are your, let's say, tips on gaining these deeper levels of awareness, now being a lot more exposed, if you want?
Yeah, definitely, I totally agree with you. Like, we have those demons, we have to live with them. There is no way around it. The more we acknowledge them, the more we see that something beautiful is going to emerge, and also painful, unfortunately. We see that those demons are always attached to some pain that we have. So the amazing thing is that, as you were saying, there is a flowing. That kind of flowing can only be achieved if we move through the pain, with instead of being stuck in front of the pain. That's the thing. So the more aware we become, the more pain we are going to experience. Then we have two options. We can push the pain back, and we decide to be blind and deaf to pain and insensitive to pain. And we think that this can be a very nice strategy, like, no, I'm perfectly fine. but that pain is going to emerge in the form of a representation of the demon. Totally. In other ways, imagine if you are playing with your children, something happens that touches a nerve, and you slap one of the children, like without even thinking, like pam, it just happened. You're going to regret it a lot, definitely. But what is most poisonous is to think something like, I don't have to do it again. I don't have to do it again. And you are going to do it again. The other option, so one option was to push the pain back. The other option is to listen to the pain and to really move through the pain. In the sense that if for instance, it happens that you slap one of your children, instead of forcing yourself to not assume that behavior, try to understand what's behind. What was the trigger? Maybe the trigger is something related to, like most of the cases, the trigger is related to some pain that you experienced when you were younger. Go back to that pain and feel it. You don't need to do a lot of things. You just need to feel the pain, to allow yourself to feel it. In this way, you are going to process the pain and to move through the pain. So that in this way, the trigger is not activated anymore because it doesn't have any pain as as a source. See what I'm saying? So
Absolutely, man.
it's not going to come up. It's not going to get bigger because there is nothing that is going to ignite it. So once the pain is resolved, the demon is going to fade away by itself. Of course, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of resilience and sometimes a lot of support in order to go through that pain.
It is fascinating what you say. It reminds me of a quote. I can't remember by whom, but it was around the easier you're to be upset, or the easier somebody can make you upset, the easier. Oh man, I can't get it together. But effectively, like what it is about is like the easier somebody can trigger you, the easier you are to control. And so it's quite interesting to see the correlation between the levels of pain and the levels of somebody else being able to actually control your behavior by pushing one of these little like buttons and being like ding, now the machine is activated, and it's sort of like on this automatic program rather than consciously choosing how to respond.
And it's what psychologists and marketeers have always used to make leverage on the public. No, that's exactly the point. If you are craving for living a certain life because you think that living a certain life is cool, and you are only going to be a better person if you reach a certain status, then whatever I'm going to tell you is connected to that status. Is going to be a product that you're willing to buy. If I tell you that having a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Maserati is going to make you, so something external is going to make you as a person a better person, you're going to do whatever it takes in order to buy that item.
See,
No
that's
one is going.
interesting. I want to ask you, do you say, in other words, that our world as it is right now is built on the collective pain that humanity experiences?
Definitely, it's based on collective pain humanity is experienced and has never resolved. That's that's the point. You can build awesome things on top of pain when pain is resolved. You are going to have your pain, you bring it with you, but you also resolve it so that it becomes a memory. It doesn't become some a demon. That's the point, or a source of a demon. It just becomes a memory. It becomes experience. It becomes something you can learn from. You can truly learn from. But if we become a, if we are continuously in denial of that pain, what we become is angry children, not peaceful adults. And so you
Absolutely.
see, angry children are going to argue about petty arguments. So you can see a long comments, long list of comments on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media for what? Probably a sentence that was expressed very badly, maybe from a person whose mother tongue was not even the language he was writing that sentence. See what I'm saying? It's a constant being in an angry mode, in a very unsettled, uncomfortable feeling mode.
So to reflect back on what you're saying is effectively the anger that somebody expresses towards you or me says more about the angry person than it says about the thing that actually made them angry.
Exactly. The more a, the more a person is angry toward the rest of the world, the more that person is angry towards himself. That's that's unfortunately how it works, and it works like that. I mean, if you're angry at me, at whoever arranged this awesome webinar, or at the community that is working or not working, or is taking a certain direction instead of what you want it to be, and it gives elements about how angry you are towards yourself. And you are angry because maybe there is some regret, there is some pain somewhere, there is um, willingness to not forgive yourself in the first place. If you don't forgive yourself, how can you forgive other people?
Man, this is really fascinating. I think our conversation from sort of remote working has like truly taken a very interesting turn to taking the remote working opportunity that all of us have for an opportunity to really transcend past painful experiences. So maybe to begin finishing off our conversation, there's two things I would like to pick up on. On the one hand, if we're working for our teams or being basically in lockdown with our loved ones, what are some ideas and tips that you would give for people to transcend these triggers that make them potentially angry?
That's a very nice question. Thanks for asking, by the way. Um, and indeed, if I may um, say something, all those things that we have just talked about are not disconnected from being a remote worker. They are strictly related to being a remote worker. Why? Because you have to deal with team, you have to set your boundaries, you have to know how to stay focused, and in doing that, you have to know how to develop a vision. So they are strictly related to that. And indeed, how can we, what can we do in order to better deal with those triggers, right? Start being genuine. Start being completely genuine and honest towards yourself. That's the first thing. If you think, for instance, that a task that you are performing is very boring, definitely, I mean, be able to admit it to yourself. Maybe so, oh, it's very boring. I really hate it. Fine. There is nothing wrong about it. You can hate that task. And then try to investigate something like, okay, I hate it. Why? And what would I do instead? This is what it's also called like brainstorm. Okay, but if we use less fancy words, is a way to really let your fantasy, no, expand and let your brain connect the dots and say, ah, maybe I would, you know what, I would invent this. Of course, it might not have a spin-off of a certain company or a startup, but it will definitely spark a true dialogue and real nice feedback that you can give to your team and say, ah, guys, I see something that is really not working here. I mean, I don't know how it is for you, vulnerability alert here. So there is, I don't know how it works for you, but for me, I meet this task like ugly, and I really hate performing this task. Can't we do just something that is better, more optimized, and so on and so forth? So you give it back to the team, showing vulnerability. See how things are connected here. If you just keep everything inside, you become an angry person. As soon as a colleague is going to tell you, listen, Tobias, can you take care of this specific task, the one that you really hate? What are you going to do? You're going to get angry at that colleague. Say, why do you give me this task? I hate it, but you don't dare to tell him that you hate that task. And the other colleague doesn't even know that you hate. So by being truly honest to yourself first and then to other people, you start a real dialogue, a real communication that is so needed above all in this time of global remote working.
Dude, I really love it, man. I really think it's so interesting that we came to the pain and the possibilities and ways how we can transform it. I really love how you talked about the importance of deep listening as well, and really being present for a conversation rather than just saying something, because that's actually connecting again to vulnerability. When we're really having a genuine conversation, it requires a lot of vulnerability, because I notice, we can come into the chat knowing that this is what the outcome will be. If we're really having a genuine dialogue, as we just had in the beginning, we just started, and then it unfolds miraculously on its own.
Definitely.
The last thing
Definitely.
I would love to ask you is, with the global remote working, there, from what we talked about, seems to be just this beautiful opportunity for all of us to gain a bit more self-awareness, maybe get familiarized with a few of the demons that we have domesticated. What's your prediction? Like, what do you think will the outcome be, or what is maybe your wish for how we can really let Corona happen for us instead of having it happen to us?
Definitely. I think that it requires, as usual, as all the revolutions, but I'm not talking about armed revolutions, all the even intellectual revolutions, um, it needs to start from every single person. Every single person needs to be aware that working remotely is an amazing opportunity. But if that person sees working remotely as a curse because he or she needs to be with his or her family the whole day, that you are not going to get farther. But if the person says, like, okay, I have the true opportunity to be with my family while I'm working, then it's something completely different. And we see now that with so much technology we have at our disposal, we can do pretty much everything remotely. So imagine to have people who are not clustered in super dense cities where the pollution is really unbearable. And imagine if people could really be spread a little bit around the world, and they could have, maybe they could take care of their own, I don't know, just throwing ideas here, their piece of land, to really be in touch, to truly be in touch with nature, to not just claim to be in touch with nature, just going to Central Park and jogging there, because that's still tamed nature. It's not real nature. It's just, I don't know, a huge British garden, right? So it needs a lot of maintenance. What if people would get back to nature, but to truly get back to nature? And imagine to be really part, to not have to miss anything of the process of your children growing up. Imagine how more patient and more resilient you would be to whatever happens with your children, to be and to truly be there when you can teach them something and to not need to bring them somewhere else the whole day and you see them only during the weekend. What if there would be this kind of parenting that is truly a truly connected parenting?